All right, we are back here on the podcast in the 2 minute drill, breaking down the captain, the 7-part Derek Jeter documentary being directed by Randy Wilkins. The first 2 episodes aired on ESPN last week. We're going to catch you up here with one of the biggest Yankee fans I know, one of my co hosts on the Sky Guys podcast, familiar to all you people here on the Just and the Suffering podcast. Nick Fraietta is here. Nick, how are you?
Doing great. I'm happy you said how many episodes it was because I actually didn't know. So 7. I didn't know if it was 6 or 8. So 7 it is.
Yeah, it's 7. So the way they did this is a little weird. They dropped the premiere after the home run derby last week. I didn't watch it live because it was like conked out after that. They had one on Thursday, the part 2, which the parts are covering. Then I think the next 2 weeks it's 2 on Thursdays, 3 and 4, then 5 and 6, and then part 7 on I think August 11th. I want to say is the last one, if the math is correct. But basically 3 more weeks of Derek Jeter documentary on ESPN.
That is strange. I didn't know how they were airing it. I thought they were just going to a Thursday. I thought they were just going to like a Thursday schedule, but I guess not. So that's actually really interesting. I'm not really sure why they would do that.
Yeah, I'm surprised too because I know that I don't know if you're aware of this, that one of the Subway Series games this week, the Met on Wednesday, is exclusively aired on ESPN. I'm surprised they did not throw an episode behind that.
Yeah, surprising.
Yeah, it's surprising, but obviously I'm not. Everybody knows I'm not a Yankee fan. I want to bring on some Yankee fans here. So somebody who I know you were really young during the early part of the Jeter years, but like as somebody, so I'm sure this must be interesting for you to really catch up on stuff that you were very young for.
Yeah, I mean, I know it all, and Yankee history is like Star Wars history for me. So, like, I know it all. I know exactly what happened. I know their record when the strike happened in '94. I know, like, Buck was gone after '95. I knew it all anyway, but it's nice to see it all.
Yeah. So, what do you think about how they did with the first 2 episodes of this thing?
I think it's great. I think that a lot of people compare this to The Last Dance. That's what I see. The big comparison is, and it's very different, I think, because 2 reasons is one, you're comparing Jordan and Jeter, and Jeter's one of the best Yankees there is, one of the best hitters ever, like 6 most hits ever. But Jeter's not one of the best players of all time. Jordan is arguably, and many would say he is, the best player of all time in the NBA. So it's a different type of documentary. It's not about the best player ever. It's about one of the best Yankees ever and one of the best captains ever. It's just a very different type thing. And also in The Last Dance, there was like a big problem. Like that 97, 98 season was like, it won anyway, but it was an issue.
Yeah.
There was a lot of bad blood, and then it was like they overcame it and then they went their own ways. There's no like issue in this. So I think that's what people who aren't Yankee fans wouldn't really be as interested. It's just a documentary about Derek Jeter, really. It's not like we're leading up to this big climactic event in the 2013 season when Jeter and A-Rod get in a fist fight. Like that didn't happen.
Yeah, I did notice that too. I mean, the Last Dance comparisons also, I mean, don't really have as many like wacky characters in this as you did in The Last Dance. And you don't have Phil Jackson, you don't have Dennis Rodman, you don't have like some of these other like side characters here, like you did in The Last Dance. That compares more to, I don't know if you saw the Man in the Arena thing with Tom Brady, where they basically went through Brady's career, basically like one Super Bowl season at a time. I feel like this is more comparable.
More like that. Yeah, it's more like that. And the only crazy character in this who hasn't spoken yet is Darryl Strawberry.
Yeah.
And he hasn't said anything yet.
I mean, we got him in episode 2.
Oh, no, he's there. I don't think he said anything, though, has he?
No, he has. He had that whole memorable clip about the fight with Marlon Benitez after he drilled Tino. He basically said, if Joe Torre didn't grab me, I'd still be in the Baltimore dugout fighting.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I think
he's the only crazy character I guess we have so far. I guess we're going to get Clemens in the next one probably, but
I would say A-Rod's going to be up there for us too.
Yeah, I mean, we had A-Rod, but he's not really like when you hear A-Rod speak, he's a pretty stand-up guy. He's a pretty professional guy. He's not really like Darryl Strawberry, who's doing drugs every day.
Yeah.
A little different than A-Rod, who, took his steroids, but A-Rod seems like a good guy.
Yeah, he does. Let's start getting into some of these things here. I feel like I like part 1 better than part 2. How'd you feel about it in terms of like as a documentary episode?
No, well, one is that background episode. So people are going to like that more, I think, generally. I liked 2 more just because it shows the Yankees and it shows 96 and 98 and all that. And like, that was more of what I knew. 95 rather, and I guess 95 was in part one, actually. 95 and prior was all, stuff that people, I guess, didn't really know. Like, I knew where Jeter was from. I knew his grandmother was a Yankee fan. That's how I became a Yankee fan. But I didn't really know, like, how his high school career went and stuff like that. And that's, new stuff to learn.
Yeah, it's new stuff to learn. And I learned a lot in part one because I'm not a Yankee fan, so I know about some of this stuff here. I did spent a lot of time with Jeter's family and particularly his parents. And the story I got the most kick out of was the whole Derek Jeter, his dad, watching The Price is Right when he would come home for half day of school, and Jeter's dad would always beat him at the pricing game and say, son, you got to learn. It's nothing life is fair. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, it shows that his parents were very, very supportive because he always said he wanted to be the Yankee shortstop, and they never told him that's not going to happen. But at the same time, they were realistic in saying that, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but things are not going to come for free. So you could do whatever you want, but you got to work if you want it.
Yeah, you absolutely do have to work if you want. And you mentioned earlier, we talked about how his grandmother's a Yankee fan. They had some good stories of him going to see the Yankees at Tiger Stadium when he was a kid. And I thought it was funny when he was talking about how he met Dave Winfield as a little kid, and then thinking about yeah, I'm sure he got dirt from Winfield about George Steinbrenner back in the day, but obviously they're not going to air any of that because they don't want to piss off the Steinbrenner family.
I also find it odd that Winfield remembered.
Yeah.
How would Winfield probably met so many kids, right? How does he remember that he met Derek Jeter?
I'm sure he's been refreshed on that story, but basically when Derek, I was I told the kid, he probably put it together in his mind eventually.
Yeah, but definitely interesting that Jeter was. I don't know. I just find it so cool that he just spent his whole life not knowing but thinking this is what I'm going to do, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, it's exactly what he did. I mean, we see him in high school too. You see his high school career about how he has his goals. And I was I'm going to be the number one player in the nation in high school. It's basically, that was also funny that at the time, I think in the Baseball America, I think rankings or whatever it was, that he was number 5 and Johnny Dane was number 1 in the high school class. And then he ends up playing with him later on. But he basically says, I'm going to be number 1. And he works hard. He gets me number 1. And coming out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, which we know is not a baseball hotbed. So really credit to his hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what he's known for. I mean, he's known for working harder than just about anybody. And like I said, Jordan is arguably, and many would consider him the best player of all time in the NBA. No one is telling you Derek Jeter is the best player of all time in Major League Baseball, but he might have the strongest work ethic of anyone in baseball, might be the best leader of anyone in baseball, and maybe the best winner of anyone in baseball. And that's why they made this documentary.
Yeah, I mean, he's also one of the face of the 90s in Major League Baseball, too, which I think has helped draw it. And I do think also he's also interesting setting up a lot of the Yankee situation in the early 90s, how they weren't doing so well. And then that we thought it was good we had Winfield in there because we had the whole George getting banned for dealing with gamblers trying to take up dirt on Winfield. We got to see basically Stick Michael takes over and gets to sort of start building the right way, not trading all the prospects away. I did like that they sort of threaded that in, but also point out, hey, if George doesn't come back, this might not work because Stick might have been too patient.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, find it weird that nowadays, George was suspended for 2.5 years from baseball from hanging out with a gambler.
Yeah.
Would that be even an issue now?
I think that gambling was more of a social stigma at that point. Plus, I think he was just using him to dig up dirt that he could use to blackmail Dave Winfield. I think that was sort of the big issue.
It's very interesting. Another thing that's interesting is you had mentioned that the Yankees in the early 90s, it seemed like they weren't, all there, right? And bad seasons from 89 to 92, they weren't good.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's been known now, not so much anymore because they just went the decade of the 2010s without winning a World Series, that the only decade they hadn't won a World Series since the 20s was the 80s.
Yeah.
Did you know, you might have known this, in 1980, the decade from 80 to 89, the Yankees had the most wins in baseball.
Yeah, they were a team that, if the wild card was in existence, they might have had a chance to actually get to World Series. And Matty would have been the playoffs before 95.
Yeah, in 1985, the Yankees won 97 games and did not make the playoffs. Now imagine winning 97 games and not making the playoffs.
Yeah, that will never happen anymore.
Yeah, especially with now they're expanding the playoffs even more. That will never happen ever again. But just an interesting thing to think that like Mattingly didn't make the playoffs, but he had the most win. And really, his decade was the '80s. Still played in the '90s too. I guess he played in both, but like in the '80s when Mattingly was Mattingly, never made the playoffs. It's crazy to think.
Yeah, it's something I talked about it last year. I was reviewing the Met 86 Mets documentary about how like they were another team that would have benefited massively from the wild card because they had like a string of like I think from like 84 to 90. I think they won an average on like 95 wins and only made the playoffs twice.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. And I do think the stick Michael did was interesting. I did also enjoy the Jeter draft story. And then he basically said going in, he knew he picked either number 1 or number 5 because he had gotten good words from both.
Yeah.
Houston takes Phil Nevin number 1. And we have I forget the name of the scout here, but he's been in baseball 50 years. Basically has Rice's report said Jeter's a good player, wins multiple championships. Houston ignores the report. He resigns. I thought that was a great anecdote for that story.
Yeah, I like that. I do remember Phil Nevin.
Yeah.
As a player, and now he's manager of the Angels, and he actually coached for the Yankees a few years too. I remember his name, so like hearing him was like, oh, Phil Nevin. The other names I didn't recognize.
Yeah, the other names here: the Indians took righty Paul Shuey, the Expos took lefty Billy Wallace, the Orioles took center fielder Jeffrey Hammonds, and the Reds. And this document tells you that they didn't want to take him because they already had Barry Larkin, and that they took center right fielder Charles Matola. So those are the back of a trivia question. Next time you go play trivia,
Yeah.
5 guys got picked out of Derek Jeter.
And to be fair to the Reds, Larkin did play until 04 and was pretty good until like 2000. So I guess it makes a little sense that you're like, oh, we don't need a shortstop. But you put yourself in the shoes of their front office, and there's a shortstop there, and you have Barry Larkin. Maybe you don't do that. Maybe it's not the craziest thing.
Yeah, you don't. And then I thought this is my favorite part of part 1 is that they actually did get the footage from Jeter's family of him getting the phone call, basically, that the Yankees drafted him and the reaction immediately after. That was really cool.
Yeah. It almost looks like it was like filmed on purpose to be in a documentary one day.
Yeah. As I mean, I thought it was great. He was talking about, like, oh, like I like told everybody, don't call me between this time. I'm expecting a phone call. And then like I'm assuming that's when the family knew to set up because they figured it'd be a first round pick. I thought it was great they actually got the immediate reaction and great for Wilkins to get the Jeter family to share that.
Yep. And this is like the stuff about Jeter that I didn't know. Like I knew he went 6th overall. I didn't know like how it happened, how it came to be with the people before him and his high school stuff. So this is what I found interesting about part 1, absolutely. But the reason I know Jeter is because of what he did as a Yankees. So that's why part 2 was better for me.
Yeah. So going on part 1 here, talk about some of his minor league stuff. He seems signed. He struggles early in the minors. I mean, I thought it was interesting at the end when he gets promoted, I think, to high A, so they get more at bats. That he basically said, I want to go home. I was just so upset with myself. And then that's where he first meets Posada and Pettit. And then like he tries to like be friends with Pettit and Pettit big times. I thought that was also interesting.
Yeah, well, Pettit said he didn't remember it that way. So I don't know. Maybe Jeter's lying.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a little embezzlement there. I mean, Jordan did embezzle some things in The Last Dance.
So who knows? But very cool to see them like all together down there. And you don't think about that as much when these guys come up from like the minors and like a young team, let's say, like let's just say, I don't know, a random team like the Marlins. These guys all come up. They're not like new teammates. They've been playing together sometimes for years. If they went up the minors together, people don't think about that.
No, they don't. And another thing was interesting I pointed out here is like we're like Jeter's also pointed out, I think in part 2 he mentioned it, but especially in part 1, like that he's lucky to not come up in the social media era here because you can imagine today, like if the Yankees took him in the first round of 2022, and all of a sudden we found he's had 56 errors in 1 year in the minor leagues, like the Yankee Twitter would be going bananas. And even Buck Shoulders said I had to call down and ask the minor league guys, like, can this kid actually play?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. They had 56 errors. I always said that if you want to look at his career, and people like to really were very polarizing with Jeter. They either say he's incredible or he sucks. Like, you hear that a lot back and forth with people, and like I think it's like I think it's both worlds. I think he was an incredibly overrated fielder, but he was the fact that I have to say this is crazy. He's an incredibly underrated hitter. He has the 6th most hits ever in baseball, and that can't be overstated. He's one of the best hitters the game's ever seen, and he was not a good fielder at all. But it didn't really matter because they won 5 World Series with him.
Yeah, I mean, you take that trade off any day of the week.
Yeah. And it wasn't like he was, I mean, advanced statistics and metrics will tell you he was bad in the field, but it wasn't like it cost the Yankees games.
Yeah, I would certainly say that here. And I also think the other interesting part of part one, the last thing I want to touch on in the first part here is like sort of see the story of the 95 Yankees, how obviously 94, they were at the best record in the American League before the strike, and then they don't get the close shit out. 95, they make the playoffs of the wild card here. We see Jeter come up for play for 2 weeks when Tony Fernandez gets hurt and gets sent back down to AAA. And then we find out later on that basically this is something I didn't know about here is that when the playoffs started, that basically they brought all the kids up and had them like on the bench in uniforms. They could experience what playoff baseball was like.
That's
I
cool.
thought, I thought that was very cool. I did think it was funny that Buck basically threatened them, basically saying, "Hey, like I do not want to be seeing you out in the streets in New York during October." And apparently, the guys just stayed in their hotel for 2 straight weeks.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, Tony Fernandez did pass away.
Yeah,
I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he passed away right before the pandemic started, and he's kind of like the. I mean, he got hurt, and then he got hurt again. If I'm not recall correctly, and that's what kind of got Jeter the job. So like he's kind of like the what got Derek Jeter into the league when it did kind of thing. But 95 Yankees are like the beginning of my memory, where like I don't really remember it much because I'm like 3, but I do recall that they existed and they were good that year. That's all I really knew.
Yeah,
I didn't really understand like how baseball worked back then, but in '96 is actually when I started learning it.
yeah.
So
I'm sure your brother probably your brother's a couple years is my age. I'm sure he probably remembers the whole Ken Griffey Jr. running down, basically running from first to home on that play, knocked the Yankees out.
yeah, I'm sure. And seeing it there, I like when watching it, I didn't remember it, but seeing it is kind of upsetting.
Yeah, definitely is. And we're going to part 2 now. We're gonna start talking about this one, and then obviously they do bring Joe Torre into the story here, and they do set up a little bit of like like how he was basically a 3-time failure as a manager, how the Yankees got ripped for hiring him. I think Joel Sherman says at the end of part 1, if you see what happens in the 95 offseason where Don Mattingly retires, Buck gets fired, it makes some big changes, and Joe Torre comes in the man. He's like, you never could have got me to believe this would be the start of a dynasty.
Yeah, that's very true. Kind of reminds me of I mean, we got a long way to go. So I don't be honestly surprised if they even won this year, but it reminds me of in a little bit how like this past offseason for the Yankees, a lot of people considered it a disaster.
Yeah.
And it was just like, what are they doing? And then they come out and they've really, they've played so well so far. I mean, obviously you got, if you can win 3 World Series in the next 6 years, then we can make this comparison fairly. But it reminds me of that. It just seems like it was an off season that everyone was like, really? This is what they did? Oh man, we were so close, we were doing so well, and now I'm not even sure anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And well, apparently not.
Yeah. I also want to give a shout out to a friend of the podcast, Rick Cerrone, the former Yankee PR director. We saw him get interviewed in part 2. So you got talking about how Jeter was so media savvy at a young age. He was like studying the manuals from that age. I want to give Rick a shout out as well. I also want to point out here that the story that they mentioned earlier about Tony Fernandez getting hurt on this, like in the spring training where he breaks his arm, and they do have this discussion here where the Yankee front office is saying, should we trade for a shortstop? And they're literally talking to, I think, the Pirates about Felix, or I think it's Pirates and Mariners about Felix Fermin, and one of the guys going the other way was Mariano Rivera going dealt the other way, and that's one of the great like what ifs in history. And the Yankees made the right choice, obviously, not to make that trade, but. You imagine the world where Mariano Rivera is like a Mariner and Felix Fermin is the Yankee shortstop at 96.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, I know you can't fall fallacy to the predetermined outcome, as Michael Kay says, but you would imagine there's no chance they win 4 World Series without Jeter and Rivera, essentially.
Yeah.
Or I guess even 5 World Series. I know that one doesn't really fall in with the same team, but, both of them were still on it. The 09, I mean.
Yeah. I did like sort of seeing at 96, they progressed it they pretty much went through the entire playoffs. They went through all that stuff with Tony Tarasco thing. Anything really stick out for you from the 96 section of this?
Well, yeah, 96 was like the year that I remember, from what I remember. Like that was, like I said, the year I got into baseball and started understanding it, and I understood like what the playoffs were, what the World Series was. Like I understood it. And that was the year. That was the year that broke the seal, if you will. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And especially after going down 2-0 to Atlanta, that was like a huge deal that they were able to win even game 3, like with Jim Leyrit's home run. And then winning that series was, oh, they were underdogs, and I don't think it was heavy. I don't know the numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but I know they were underdogs in that series, but I don't think it was a huge, like, there's no chance the Yankees win, but it was like the Yankees are back when they won that. This is the first World Series since 78. It was the first time they were in the World Series since 81, I believe. So that was like what put the Yankees back on the map.
Yeah, I do remember, especially when we talk about part 4, game 4 in the documentary, when the Braves jump out of that big 7-0 lead, and then the Yankees chip away, chip away, chip away, and they tie on the home run from Leyritz. And Jeter says, like, at that moment, we knew we had them. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, that shows you how tight that group was. I'm sure a lot of the fans didn't feel that way.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And you know that, like I said, that was a team that really broke the seal, and used a lot of guys on that team that were not on the '98 team. Like the '98, for example, look at the '96 team, look at the '99 team. It's a very different roster.
Yeah, I mean, you got like guys like Charlie Hayes, Wade Boggs, I
Yep.
think Jimmy Key in that '96 team. A lot of those guys are not there.
Wetland.
Wetland.
Wade Boggs is the funny one to me
Yeah.
because I remember they had Wade Boggs. I always said they had Wade Boggs on that team, and that was his only World Series championship in his career. And the funny thing is, he was obviously the third baseman, right? He's a Hall of Fame third baseman,
Yeah.
first ballot Hall of Famer. But I always never understood, like as a little kid, I always said, if Wade Boggs was a Hall of Famer and third baseman, why wasn't he the one catching the fly ball to end the game? The last game, it was Charlie Hayes.
Yeah.
I still don't really fully understand it. Was Wade Boggs not that good back then? I don't really fully, it was Hayes also good and they split time. I don't really fully understand it.
Yeah, I didn't really get that either, but like I did think it was interesting. We also got a lot of the aftermath winning the World Series because obviously that team became like folk heroes and became very beloved because at that point, like the mid '80s Mets sort of faded out. The Mets was being bad again. The town was right to be grabbed. This Yankee team really grabbed the town. Really has not let go since. And it was at least seeing Jeter get all these opportunities. See all the rappers in the documentary talk about how Jeter became like a folk icon. I thought that was definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm assuming what Aaron Judge goes through right now, but to a lesser extent because Jeter won the gold
Yep.
at that time in his career. And also, as Jeter mentioned in that with the rise to stardom thing, he had mentioned this like the social media stuff and like how, he had, like, back then everyone was having a good time. They were going out and there was celebrities everywhere. There was Jay-Z and Jadakiss and rappers everywhere and celebrities, like Denzel Washington and J-Lo and everyone had a good time. And now they got to watch what they do because of social media and stuff. And shows the difference between, like, Jeter and Judge, who's like kind of like this generation. If you had to pick someone on their team to be this generation's Jeter, you'd pick him. But very, very different because, I'm sure Aaron Judge has to watch what he does a lot, and Jeter didn't have to worry about that.
Judge is also married at this point, and Derek Jeter was single at this point of his career. So like I'm sure he was getting around. And
yeah, also Judge is 30 and
yeah,
Jeter was 21.
yeah. This is a good use of Darryl Strawberry in this documentary because everybody remembers how Darryl Strawberry sort of screwed up like his prime with the Mets because of his drug use, and he basically said, like, I talked to Jeter, said, hey, like, I'm gonna keep an eye on you. You tell me if anything's going on, and that was a good influence to have on him, on Jeter, early in his career.
But when did Darryl kind of like stop?
I think like once the Yankees brought him, I think it was like '96 they brought him in. Like I think at that point, like once he went out west, he sort of got messed up again. I think the Yankees gave him a second chance, and he was on the straight and narrow for a while.
Okay, all right. Well, is he still okay?
As far as I'm aware, because I know they did a documentary on him and Doc a few years ago. I feel like he's got a better grip on his situation than Doc does.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember if Doc was in this yet, but we also got in the off-field stuff here. The beginnings of the Jeter A-Rod relationship. And did you know that like that A-Rod went to like some showcase in Miami when Jeter was playing high school ball and just watched him there and then they became friends?
No, I didn't know that at all. I always just figured that Nomar, Jeter, and A-Rod were just paired together by the media because they were all good shortstops at that time.
Yeah.
That's just what I figured. I had no idea that there was actually some sort of relationship there. And I know the relationship got spiraled out of control by the media where they really wanted a story with it. And in reality, the guys were good friends growing up, or not growing up, but like, getting into the league. And then they didn't really drift apart. They just weren't really that close anymore. And the media made such a huge deal over it
Yeah,
because
so
they wanted a story. Like they never really had a huge, like, I hate this guy, he hates me, we're enemies type of thing. They were friends. They weren't best friends, and the media needed them to be best friends.
yeah, I also feel like A-Rod also was showing a little bit of insecurity there because they talk about, oh, like, like, why is Jeter standing over me in the photo? Like, why is he getting all the attention when I have better numbers? There was a lot of that. You sort of seeds being planted. Is gonna, you figure when we get to A-Rod show up on the Yankees, it's gonna lead to some drama there.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how true all that stuff is. I really don't.
Well, I mean, we saw A-Rod address. We haven't really heard Jeter address any of that stuff yet. I figure that's coming from him when the A-Rod shows up on the Yankees in one of these next couple episodes.
Yeah, I would imagine the next episode will take us through to 2001, and then we'll go from there, which is also an interesting thing because the Jordan documentary, the Last Dance, that is, went like if 98 was the big deal. There's no big deal in this.
Yeah.
It's just going to go through his career. So I would imagine like you're going to have an episode that goes over like the Giambi years, you know?
Yeah, I think from what I would guess here, I mean, they did open on his last game I think both episodes. So I feel like that's gonna be sort of the point we're driving towards with this thing. But I do think that like you're right. I think we're gonna get probably like the 99, 2000, 2001 era. This one maybe we get A-Rod at the end of the second hour that we're getting this week.
Yeah. And then I guess they'll go with an episode that's like 05 to 08 and then do like an 09 to 12 and then finish it off.
Yeah. That'd be my guess here. And I do think in terms of the 98 season, I think they did a good job sort of showing how this group was coming together here. And this was obviously the sequence where we get the big fight with the Orioles. We get the Indian stuff where I thought this was a good story where they're down 2-1. El Duque is pitching game 4, and the day of, he's like helping the hotel staff clean up plates, and they're calling Torre, and it's like, is El Duque right? He's like, he's helping the waiters. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah. And that would have been rough. Like, like the Mariners won 116 games and just lost.
Yeah.
Like, that, just imagine that. You come all that way and then you just lose and then it's over. Like, you worked all that for the whole season and you just lose in the first round. Happens all the time in football, but doesn't really happen. I mean, it happens a lot in baseball too, but, it's just, it sucks when it happens. You win 100, 110 games maybe, and you just lose.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too because we did also get the bit from '97 where they lose to the Indians in the divisional series. They don't make another World Series run. If they lose the Indians again, I also feel the pressure on that team just gets like skyrocketed going forward.
Absolutely, yeah. Kind of reminds me of a little bit like when the Dodgers won like 107, 106 games a few years ago. They just lost in the first round. Like no one remembers that Dodger team anymore because they lost. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they do win the World Series. I also thought it was a great line. I forget who said whether it was Buster Olney or Joel Sherman, one of these media types. They said like when they played the Pirates in the World Series, basically like a fly being in the path of a steamroller.
Yeah, they crushed the Padres in that series. I know all the calls. They used to have some CD. It was like a CD, and it had, I don't know, 20 track, call it, and all the odd number tracks were John Sterling and Michael Kay announcing something that happened throughout that season, like a big moment. And all the even number tracks were songs. And I don't know how the songs had to do with the Yankees, but I had that CD and I used to listen to them over and over. Like the one, like I think it was Michael Kay's call of Tino's grand slam in game 1. Kind of cool.
Yeah, it was definitely cool, and I do also think like we get them winning here, and they end the documentary here on his first arbitration hearing, which is after he's been in the league 3 years. They've won 2 World Series. He goes in, asks for $5 million. Yankees offer 3.2, and then they go to the arbitration hearing where basically they're telling, oh, like you don't hit for enough power, you don't do this, and this is something we've seen with the Yankees over the years, like where they love to win the arbitration hearing. Famously that Dellin Betances, they had a hearing with him, and he was never the same after that. They nearly got into a big fight with Judge this year before they settled before the hearing here. And I think it was interesting that like that way that went down bothered Jeter immensely. And the line I put here, he says at the end, so it's like loyalty one way is stupidity. I thought that was definitely interesting. It's like a foreshadow of what happens to him later in his career.
True. But, I mean, think it almost seems to me like ESPN Films is trying to create an issue, and there really wasn't one. Like there might have been a little issue here where Jeter was ticked off, absolutely. But you can't tell me in 2009 Derek Jeter was upset with the Yankee front office. Like he didn't care. It didn't ruin his career with the Yankees. Sure, it has with people like you mentioned, Betances, but they're trying to create some sort of drama in the story. Because in reality,
It's not much.
yeah, like if you're going to do a documentary, there should be like, this is how it started, then things were going well, but then this happened, and then it ended up okay. There is no then this happened in this. Him and A-Rod were not enemies. They didn't hate each other. Jeter didn't hate Brian Cashman. Derek Jeter's biggest enemy was the fans saying that he was overrated. That's it.
Yeah, I do feel like this is that was them setting up. They're going to dive more into, especially remember like after that he signs. We haven't gotten there yet. The document, but he does sign that 10-year, $189 million deal. I think in '99, I want to say that runs through 08, and then I think before the 09 season, I think it was somewhere in that range. Maybe it was 2000 he signed it, but after that deal expires, he basically has that big thing where he wants to resign the Yankees. The Yankees play hardball, make him take like a very low offer compared to like what his reputation had been.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the sort of drama we're going to get into here because he does end up going to ownership later on. And I wonder if we're going to touch on that, if it's just going to be on the Yankee stuff.
There is, I think it was 07 actually, wasn't it 07?
Yeah.
When did he sign that contract? I don't remember actually, but I know A-Rod was 07. I don't remember actually when Jeter signed the big contract and when it ended.
Yeah, I'm trying to look here about this one here because I'm looking at the history of Jeter's contracts.
I thought he signed the contract in like 2000.
You might be right because I'm looking here. Like he does sign.
Yeah, it was after 2010.
He signs the 10-year 189,
and then he signed a 4-year
351. I think that was the Ajita period when they were trying. They're potentially replacing him, and then he just ended up taking a little less than what they initially wanted to offer him.
And at that point, I think it was time anyway. I think his career, was obviously very good in the beginning and the middle was great. And I think once you got to, he had a good season in 2012. I'll always remember that. 2012 was a big year for him, but really once you got like past the World Series in 2009, he kind of wasn't the same, except for that 1 year he had in 2012.
Yeah, because he had 2012, he had the 1 year, then he breaks the ankle in 13. And at the end of the playoffs that year, basically costing the entire 13 season. And then he comes back for the last year.
The 13 season, Mike, you have to hear this. Because that was a season where the Yankees had a pretty good roster, but they were unbelievably banged up. So you got to hear this. It might take me a minute. Just give me 1 second. Here. All right. The Yankees starting lineup for opening day of the 2013 season was Brett Gardner in center field, Eduardo Nunez at shortstop hitting second, Cano hitting third, Kevin Youkilis is cleanup, Vernon Wells hit fifth, Ben Francisco hit sixth, Ichiro was seven, Jason Nix hit eight, and Francisco Cervelli hit ninth.
Yeah, was that the year that Granderson broke his wrist preseason?
Granderson was hurt, Teixeira was hurt, A-Rod was hurt, and Jeter was hurt, all to start the season. All four of them were injured at the beginning of the year.
Yes, I'm looking at the team here. I'm looking at like the guys who played the most games in that team. Obviously, A-Rod was there, but he missed some time too. I mean, you look at
they all missed time at the beginning. And you mentioned Granderson, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so Granderson, A-Rod, Teixeira, and Jeter were all injured for a large portion of that season.
Yeah, and look at the rotation behind Sabathia there. It's like Hiroki Kuroda, Pettit, Phil Hughes, and Von Nova.
Yeah, I just think of that team and say, all right, well, you would have had Cervelli anyway, but you would have had Teixeira, Cano, Jeter, A-Rod, Granderson would have been in center, and then it's not that bad. You have Gardner, and then you have Ichiro in right field. It's not that bad of a team.
No, it's not, because I'm curious how they're going to handle those last couple of years, because after like 11, like the Yankees, I mean, after that Tiger run, they sort of do fall off a little bit where they get to like Yankee bad, which is like average for everybody else.
Yeah, after that broken ankle, I believe it was in game one.
Yeah, it was game one of the Tiger series.
It was like extra innings, I think.
Yep.
So after that game, pretty much, they missed the playoffs in 13 and 14 and 16, and they lost a wild card game in 15. So they hadn't been to a real playoff series from 12 to 17.
Yeah.
So those years after 12, it's really just going to be like, and then it was over kind of thing. And like a lot of the years, you grew up during it too. A lot of years like 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, 10, 11, it was just the Yankees losing in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking
All
up.
of them.
Yeah, I mean, like 2013, Derek Jeter played only 17 games.
Yeah, he was mostly out that season. I think that they'll probably show that could be a big part of it. Actually, a big like, the ending of the thing could be like Jeter got hurt and he really wanted a
Go on
final run on his terms, not going to go out on an injury type of thing, and that could be what motivated him to say 2014 is going to be my last season and I'm going to go out with a bang.
It's ironic what happened with Mariano too, because Mariano, I remember, tears the Achilles when he's like
in the outfield in Kansas City.
Yeah, and then he misses the rest of 12 and 13, comes back for his swan song.
Yep.
It's crazy what happens to the two different Yankees like back-to-back years.
It kind of happened with A-Rod too.
Although A-Rod, they kind of were getting ready to shove him out.
Wasn't an injury though with him?
No, they was getting ready to shove him out the door at that point.
Yeah, well, they literally did shove him down They literally did shove him out the door, if you remember.
Yeah, they did, and
they forced him to retire mid-season.
They did. It was crazy. I remember they had the A-Rod night. I think like they really scheduled one game where he's gonna hit cleanup, and then he never played again.
Yep, I was there.
Yeah, it was a crazy night for sure. I'm sure we'll get more A-Rod coming up here. I mean, we got part 3, part 4 coming up next week here. Like, what are you looking forward to in these next couple episodes, you think?
I want to see more Red Sox stuff.
Yeah.
To me, that was the best thing about growing up at the time that we grew up when it comes to baseball was the Yankees were obviously so great when we were young. Like for me, it was between like they were winning World Series when I was like from 4 to 8 years old, which was great. But then once I got to like middle school and I started really liking baseball, it was the Yankees were good and the Red Sox were good and everybody else in baseball was just kind of there.
Yeah.
And they ran the show. And watching those games in Fenway with Manny and Ortiz and Pedro and Damon, and you can go on, I can name the whole team that they had. And the whole Yankee team, they hated each other. And like those games were incredible. Like the game that Jeter flew into the stands after catching that fly ball in 2004. Like that's what the games mattered so much. Like the Red Sox games, you had to prepare for them. It's like they're playing the Red Sox this weekend. Like, okay, we got to watch all these games. You cleared the schedule. You watch the Yankee Red Sox games. Not so much anymore that way, but it was awesome back then.
Yeah, I also want to see like sort of the end of the original dynasty from like the 2001 season. I mean, we've gotten plenty. I'm sure we get some more on like the run the team went on after 9/11, where they sort of like united the city here. I do want to sort of get like your perspective on like how that team sort of broke up after that World Series loss, because I mean at that point you have
it really broke up.
I mean O'Neill retires, Brosius is gone, Tino's gone. That's when Giambi comes.
Block's gone.
Like they're all pretty much gone. Except the core four stay, and they're bringing a bunch of mercenaries around them. Start with Giambi.
Yeah, I always felt bad for the core four. So or felt bad about something with the core four. Who was the core four, Mike, for the audience?
It was Jeter, Pettit, Posada, Rivera.
Yeah, and I feel like there's someone missing.
Yeah, because they talk about this a little bit. I mean, JJ on his podcast is doing recaps of the episodes, and they talk about how Burrow's basically the fifth Beatle of the group because he gets there before all of them and retires before the rest of them.
Yeah, but Bernie, I feel like he was always left out of that group, and he should have been involved. Like if you think about it, this is no disrespect to Jeter, obviously, but there is a very realistic chance. I don't know if this is true. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it might be true. At no point in Jeter's 20-year career was he the best player on the Yankees. That might be true. Maybe 2006.
There was one year where he nearly won the MVP. I think that's probably
06 is the year you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think he deserved to win the MVP, but Bernie Williams was their best player during their dynasty.
Yes.
During the mid-2000s years, A-Rod was their best player. Then it became whoever. I don't even know who it was in 2012. They didn't really have any good players, to be honest with you. But maybe Sabathia, honestly. Rivera.
I'd still been A-Rod also.
Could have been, yeah. But that's what makes, I think, Jeter so special is he was never. I don't even think there was ever a time in baseball when Jeter was the best shortstop in baseball. Maybe again that season, but he's a magical player because he was always up there.
Yeah,
and he was not only up there, he was right. He's behind all-time greats.
Yeah, I think for me that's the thing I'm most excited for is that and A-Rod showing up and his initial reaction. We've never really gotten that on the record. I'm curious, like if he's going to try and be PC, if he's going to let us know how he's really feeling when like he hears that they're getting A-Rod.
I would imagine he would feel like really, really, really loved because they went out and got a guy who I don't think it's a secret was a better player than him, right?
Yep.
And they made it. The other guy moved positions.
Yep.
I think that's enormous respect for Derek Jeter.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be the stuff to watch here. I feel like I gotta look up the rundown here because I think there's a listing online of like what the episodes are gonna be. I do feel like
there is. I can take a look at it after.
yeah. I would suspect we're getting to the start of the A-Rod stuff next. I would not be surprised if like we I think part 3 on the 01 team. I think I would not be surprised if part 4 is sort of the Red Sox collapse.
Don't want to hear it.
I feel like that's the dramatic point of where you're leading off part 4 is like after that, what happens?
Yeah.
Because you get another World Series in there too. We had the 03 one. People always forget they get to, and they lose to the Marlins.
Yeah. I remember us being so pissed off. I didn't even watch.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all we got here, Nick. Thanks all the time. I really appreciate it. I mean, I also want to let the audience know you're with you on the Sky. We're going to be back this week. We're going to be talking some Jedi Fallen Order on the Sky Guys podcast.
That's right. Wednesday. We're recording Wednesday night. I think the episode should be out Thursday or Friday, but going to be a great time.
Yeah. Plus, we did a stream last week with our friend Nick D'Alessio on Twitch, Recovery Room 90. He started playing through Fallen Order. We hung out with him when he got to the first 2 planets, and we had some fun, like chatting stuff. And he only died once, so good job by him.
Yeah, great job by him. We'll talk to him again coming up.
If you want to follow you on Twitter, how can I do that?
Nick Fry _9. Just retweeting stuff from this and the Sky Guys.
Nick, thanks all the time. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.